Every step away from home into another's land is a discovery in the making, a move towards becoming, a series of hope dashed and new hopes raised, friendship lost, new connections made, and new friends up for grabs. It is a journey with a known beginning, but an unknown end.
So, hi, Taiwo.
Hi, Daniel.
Um, if you ask my immigration story, my narration can be very messy, right? I may not follow a strict chronology. My story may not evolve in a linear format, or it may not start from the land of origin, as that may not be the beginning of my story. So, as you work with time and space in theater, what role do they play in immigrant stories, do you think?
Thank you, Deniz. And interesting. One thing I love about theater and the kind of theater that I do, apply theater, take theater to the community, theater for social issues, is the ability, and you're devising, creating with community, it's the ability to collapse and expand time. It's the ability to go back, think about the past, take the narrative, come to the present, and even envision what's ahead. And when we think about the idea of immigrant story as an idea of always becoming, thinking about, moving forward, always forward facing, and of course reflecting on the past, I think time becomes of essence in that I can pick a story each time and tell it differently. I can pick a story and revise it. I can pick a story to to engage or even imprint what I hope the future will be. So there's a different idea of time and that relationship to time, in that it can be expanded, it can also be collapsed. And also, as immigrants, we occupy different spaces at different point in time, um, coming from a different place to a new environment. It can be overwhelming. At times, it can be happy feeling. Even when we're looking at the arc of, or the circle of the immigrant experience, you have the honeymoon phase. At that time, everything is beautiful. You're so excited about it. And at some point, it's like you move to that phase where it's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And later on, another beautiful thing happens, and it's just circle, it goes like that. But then finally, to kind of wrap that up, is the fact that with time and space gives us the opportunity to explore storytelling, meaning making, and identity making through that process of expanding and collapsing time, for the purpose of not just only revisiting the past, but even thinking about the past, its connection to the present, and perhaps how that might inform the future.
You said it's a way of meaning making. That's meaning making for the people, for the immigrants and refugees as well, right? Making sense of their own experience.
Absolutely. And really not just for themselves alone, but even presenting something that others can make meaning of. And in the next few minutes, we're going to be showing a video, and that video really speaks to a project that involved immigrants and international students, and in community, really thinking about their experience as it connects to where they are right now. So they are making meaning for themselves as participants in the project and all of that. But then community and audience member that see that, they make meaning also as Canadians or as other settlers here, and stuff like that. So it's the idea of meaning making within, for themselves, as refugees and immigrants and all of and that, and has been part of that project. But then for the community also to make meaning out of that, right? What's the connection of where they are coming from, their experiences, to where we are right now? Are there any connection? Are there differences? Are there things we need to learn and kind of absorb here and adapt? Are there things I am doing that, oh, it might not really speak to where they're coming from or their experiences, and vice versa? I think it's a two-way thing, right? The meaning making and the identity making process.
So let's have a look at the video.
So the Onion Theatre Project is a theater geared towards exploring immigrant experience in the city of Victoria. It's a collaboration between Victoria Immigrant Refugee Center Society, funded by the British Columbia Art Council, and in collaboration with other stakeholders within the city of Victoria.
Our whole process is using the people that are here and creating a space for all of our voices to be heard in a unique and different way. And that's kind of the heart of doing this kind of community-based practice, is that we're really just providing a space for us to creatively explore this topic and what that means to us.
I'm here to defend the individual. I'm here to defend myself.
In my line of work as a theater practitioner, a deviser, and a theater maker, stories are told through the body, the expressions, the voice. And for you as a museum and heritage scholar, Deniz, what does the context of object look like? And how do objects tell us about hope, about becoming and meaning making in the immigrant stories? What does object tell us about the process of all of that?
That's a very good question. I mean, of course, in the museum and heritage world, objects or artifacts or, these are really evidences of stories for us. And the way we look at objects is actually as, seeing the stories, stories get life as we look at these objects. So there is this one concept that I really like, the evocative objects, objects that become alive with the stories of people. And they are experienced as part of the self, as and have a special status. So when I say they're part of the self, they represent an experience in the past, and it can be very subjective, right? So it might have a lot of value for me because it's all about my relationship to people, to events that happened in the past, to emotions I might have had. So that object represents that whole world, that whole lived experience, and it's a very personal experience. But it can also be collective, right? I mean, there are objects that kind of represent a whole collective experience, a whole collective identity. And, and in that sense, they have that collective value. And so objects are very personal, but they can also be very collective. And they remind us ourselves at that time and at that place. I mean, there are a lot of, I'm sure, immigrant stories where or immigrants or refugees or people who travel across the lands, they remember their past, their childhood, their loved ones, their homelands by looking at photographies or objects they have inherited from their parents or things they have, acquired on the way during their immigration story. So these objects remind us of people we left behind, lives we left behind, but also homelands that we left behind, right? They also remind us that house, that city, that neighborhood, that landscape where we once lived. And there's, of course, kind of a nostalgic connection with that. So objects are very, very powerful, I think, in terms of reminding us who we were and who we are. We're telling stories using them.
So it connects back to that idea of identity. And in the context of performance, objects concretize ideas. And in the meaning making process also, an object speaks about a person's identity, connect them to past, present, and perhaps future. So my phone, for example, when I first arrived here in Canada, and really I'm not, I'm not a refugee, so because we know that there's always that distinction between an immigrant and a refugee. We all know that in terms of those that are forced to leave versus those that voluntarily came. But my phone became an important object for me to connect to my community, to my family back in Nigeria. And it was an access to people that I love. And so it became part of me, part of my story, part of my own experience, and even up to now.
Yeah, that's right. They are powerful to remind us of all those identities and experiences. To tell our stories, to narrate our identities. I'm interested to see how objects were used in your performances.
Absolutely, and I think the next video would show how we kind of use objects from school, backpack to other kind of objects in the performance. Just, as people were moving from one place to another and kind of narrating the experience.
Let's have a look.
Hey, Mom, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Mom, are we going somewhere? We're going.
Is the bus ever gonna get here?
I know, right, Victoria?
All right, get on tight. Mom, where are we going? Are we gonna be there soon? Ding ding. Mom, my shoe is untied. Thanks, Mom. Mom, what are we doing here? Why can't we go in?
We just can't.
Mom, I don't want to go to school. I have to go to school. You have to learn. What?
Come on, go.
Mom.
Be nice.
I had a fast day at school, Mom. do a pretty picture, and I do trees and clouds and flowers, and then shh, we're going to the temple. And I made 2 new friends, and they're really nice. But I'm not very good at skipping rope, but it's. What's this? And it's Mom. Can you have a question? Shh. Mom. I want cookies. This is boring. Mom.
Stop! Stopping the world from spinning.
Sister, we gotta go. Have you done?
I'm almost ready. Wait for me. Wait for my friend. Thank you.
Stay here. Not make a song. Up! Up!
So that was an interesting performance. This makes me think about the relation between objects and homeland. I mean, in immigrant stories, land becomes a significant part of collective and personal memory. I'm just wondering how you think this perception and memory of homeland, land of origin, in immigrant stories can converse with the perception of the new land, and in particular, land acknowledgement in Canada.
Well, thank you. I think that the perception or the idea and the practice of land acknowledgement here in the, in the context of Canada, and thinking about that in relationship to the immigrant story raises so many questions. I think first of all, at least for me, it sort of put me in this very pause mode to ask myself how the land came to be where I'm coming from, the historical realities, right? So Nigeria, for example, was colonized by Britain and had its independence in 1960. And some other part of West African countries were colonized by France. And so they were Francophone countries. And then the implication of that from a cultural standpoint and from a physical actual land standpoint, where there's a land grabbing system, or the Shell, for example, a lot of corporations, not necessarily Shell alone, a lot of oil corporations literally took the land from the people to mine and and things like that. So that's one, giving me that opportunity to take a pause and think historically where I'm coming from. But then as an immigrant getting here, start helping me to also take a pause to understand what are the historical realities of where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
and also to start in some way even critiquing the existing practice. How does land acknowledgement connect to, the realities, the practical realities of this, of the indigenous people, for example, or what, and what's even my own responsibility as an immigrant in that, now that I'm here. And those are kind of critical conversations that we had in the Onion Theory project, really asking ourselves, now that we're here, what does that mean? How can we become responsible, careful listeners as immigrants? How can we get to learn more about the history so that, in our day-to-day activities, we're working in ways to advance the community, the society that we now find ourselves, that some of us now call home. So it's in multiple levels, from a historical to a political, and then to the personal, where we start, and of course the personal is political also, but then to the personal, where we start thinking, what are the kind of actions that I can take? And so in one of the stories in the Onion Theater project, we saw this particular a family where they left their country, they were dispossessed, as refugees in, I think it's from, I can't remember the name of the country now. And then they got here and realized that even though they were displaced from their own place to a new place, and then I realized that there were some people that were actually displaced from here too. And then we now start seeing the connection in human story. We start seeing the connection in systemic realities that we find ourselves. That even though it may be called colonialism where I'm coming from, or colonization where I'm coming from, but here it's almost the same thing. We start finding connection to South Africa with apartheid system, and here in Canada to the residential schools, project. We start seeing the racial genocide of here to that in Rwanda of the Hutsis and the Tutsis, right? We start seeing those connections, and then we now realize that at the end of the day, we're all human beings within this system. We're all entangled, and how can we collectively find a way to untangle ourselves, whether from the colonial grab, whether from the capitalist grab, or from the hierarchical society that we find ourselves, from patriarchy to every other forms of, and it's not that all of them are necessarily bad in themselves, but that we've taken them in a way and some are using them for their own very good. Then how can we break that circle of those oppressions? I think for me, that's the big question. And how do those things relate to the bigger things that make us a society? So the land acknowledgement essentially for me, and in the context of the Onion Theater project and in my own work, then means that it's a signifier. It's really a metaphor. It's really a pointer to bigger things that we start asking ourselves, what does that mean? And then in the immigrant story of the process of becoming, that hopeful, whatever that is for individual, whatever we want to become, how do I become ethical and responsible in all of that narrative and that process?
Wonderful, Taiwo, very well said. I really enjoyed this dialogue with you, and I'm sure we will continue it later.
Same here. Thank you so much, Deniz.
Our conditions for moving may be different, but we are all moving towards a direction we aspire to inspire others. The destination itself can be in the direction. The glimpse of hope are in the little wins, gains from making ourselves better, and accumulated resilience from past generations to the present, so that our tomorrow can be better than yesterday, and we can be better people every day.